I can still hear the crunch of shattered glass beneath my boot, each shard like a reminder that something inside me had broken too. The sky above Bakhmut was a mouthful of ash and prussic acid, every breath a gamble. I pressed my forehead against the jagged edge of a ruined window frame, the metallic tang of my own blood flooding my senses. There was a moment, maybe 2 heartbeats, when I thought I might bleed out right there, clutching the frayed sleeve of Petrenko, my radio operator and only friend left from my platoon. His eyes were wide, glassy with shock or fear, I couldn't tell which, and I swore I could hear his last ragged inhale over the roar of incoming artillery. "Yura," I rasped, fingers trembling as I dug the mud from his shredded uniform. "You and Mew made a promise." He tried to smile, mouth twitching, but the smile caught halfway, split by pain. I felt his hand go limp in mine. Then everything went black. I woke to a cold so deep it felt like the earth itself was trying to swallow me. My ribs screamed with each breath, but I forced one more. The silence around me was heavier than any bombardment, no artillery, no screams, just the distant drip of water echoing through the hollow shell of a building that looked like it had once been an apartment block. The crumpled shape of my helmet lay beside me. I sat up on unsteady arms, vision blurred, and realized I was alone. My first thought, Yura. I dragged myself across the rubble-strewn floor, every movement a calculus of agony. A piece of concrete tore through my trousers, grazed my thigh, and I tasted copper. I spat it out, forced myself to focus on the mission I'd long since given up on. Survive. I remembered why I'd come here. A week ago, I had been a combat medic, stitching wounds and offering hurried prayers to soldiers who believed in something bigger than themselves. Now, I was just another broken soldier fighting gravity to stay conscious. Patriotism felt like a ghost, a whisper of pride drowned out by the thunder of war. I found Petrenko curled against a collapsed wall in the next room, half buried under debris. His radio was silent. I crawled to him, heart hammering. I cradled his head, felt the sticky warmth of his blood. He tried to speak, but only a raspy sigh escaped. I tore off my own scarf and pressed it to his wound, hands slick. "Stay with me," I begged, though I knew I was talking to the dead. Memories flooded me. Yura teaching me a lullaby from his daughter's cradle song, his laughter when I called him Grandpa, the glint in his eye every time he said, "We'll get through this, brother." I patched him as best I could, fashioning a tourniquet from my belt. The taste of bile rose in my throat when I realized even if I got help, we were both too far gone. But I refused to lie to him. I refused to lie to myself. With a final, shuddering exhale, Yura's hand went slack. The radio clattered, then fell silent. I curled around him, listening to the soft drip of water, the slow echo of bullets from afar. I left him there. I know that's heresy in the field, Manuala medic never abandons a patient. But I was bleeding too. Cracked ribs, a concussion that danced behind my eyelids every time I blinked. And if I stayed, neither of us would see morning. So, I crawled, inch by agonizing inch, pulling my rifle like it was the last lifeline tethering me to the world. Outside, the sky was stained with fire. I climbed over the wall, boots slipping in the mud, and forced myself to run. Each step was punctuated by pain so sharp it felt like knives in my lungs. I made it to the trench line just as dawn broke in bruises of violet and gold. The commander shouted over the din, but his words were lost in my pounding ears. A medic team grabbed me, dragging me behind the lines. I caught one last glimpse of Bakhmut's battered skyline smoke twisting like a wounded animal. They patched my ribs, washed the blood from my hair, and fed me soup that tasted like ash and tears. Sleep came in fits, haunted by the echo of Yura's last breath. In my dreams, he was always calling my name, asking for that lullaby, asking me to promise one more time. When I woke, the sky was clear. I should have felt relief, but my chest was tight with guilt. Patriotism felt hollow when the price was a brother's life. Yet somewhere beneath the weight of regret, a spark stirred. I remembered Yura's final words, "Keep going." Not for me, but for something Largera promised to live for both of us. I walked back into the field the next day, rifle slung low, feeling every eye on me. I carried Yura's radio pouch in my pocket, a fragment of what remained. The war raged on, bullets whizzing like angry hornets. But as I stepped over the threshold of that shattered street, I felt something new. Resolve. I would fight. Not for medals or glory, but for the memory of a friend who believed in me until his last breath. I would stitch my own wounds and mend my broken spirit the way I once stitched others. And when the dust finally settled, I would tell his story. Because I lied to him. I told him we'd both make it. But I'll keep living carry us both home in my heart. I strapped Yura's radio pouch to my belt and stepped onto the muddy road leading back to the front. Every footfall was a reminder of broken promises, of blood that couldn't be washed away. The wind carried the scent of gunpowder and charred pine. It felt like I was inhaling both grief and determination. My first patrol after recovery was a blur of shouts and tracer fire. I kept my head low, scanning rubble-strewn alleyways for movement. Jolts of memory, Yura's laughter. The soft lullaby surfaced with every flash of a muzzle. My pulse throbbed in my temples like a drumbeat of fate. When a sniper round thudded into the wall inches from my shoulder, I tasted iron and conviction. I realized then that survival wasn't just about flesh and bone. It was about purpose. I began to move differently, each decision sharpened by the cost I'd paid. I patched up bodies in the field with trembling hands that refused to betray me again. I shared Yura's lullaby with wounded soldiers as a quiet anthem of hope. Spokojnoj noci, moj malish. It floated through the trenches, weaving grief into something like comfort. One evening, under a fractured moon, we were pinned down by mortar fire. The world was reduced to flashes of earth exploding, cries of comrades lost. I pressed myself against the wall of a ruined schoolhouse and felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Private Koval, face streaked with soot. His eyes were wide, haunted. "Medic," he whispered, voice cracking. I can't stop shaking." I met his gaze, and I saw Yura's gentle smile reflected in Koval's fear. I knelt beside him, tore a strip of cloth, and bound his arm. My ribs protested, but I straightened, fingers steady. "Focus on my voice," I said softly, humming that lullaby. With each note, the tremor in his hands slowed. When the barrage lifted, Koval looked at me with tears and gratitude. In that moment, I understood what Yura meant by keep going. It wasn't just survival, it was passing the flame. The next dawn found me standing at the edge of no man's land, shoulders squared, radio pouch heavy against my side. I closed my eyes, breathed in the cold air, and whispered into the silence, "I promised you one more sunrise." Then I stepped forward. It was a reconnaissance run, quiet, fast, low to the ground. They called it a ghost walk. Just me, one rifleman, and the dark. The fields outside Kremina were frostbitten, white with dead silence, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat like it's someone else's. I moved like smoke, every step rehearsed in the rhythm of survival. We crouched near the wreckage of a burned-out BMP, its turret twisted skyward like a skeletal hand. I was scanning for tripwires when the shot rang out clean, sharp, almost surgical. The kid beside me, the 19th of Maybe, dropped before he screamed. His name was Dima. I only knew that because I had just asked him an hour before what his mother's name was. "Valentina," he'd said, smiling like someone who thought he'd make it home. I crawled to him as the second shot clipped the gravel where my boot had been. Blood soaked the snow like ink on silk. His eyes were locked on mine, wide and pleading, like he was looking for permission to die. "No," I said, voice low, trembling. "You hold on." I pressed my hand to the hole just under his collarbone, feeling the pulse weaken. I whispered the lullaby, the same one Yura used to hum through the static of the radio. "Spokojnoj noci, moj malish." He blinked, once, then again. The trembling stopped, and for a moment, I thought I had done it. I thought I'd saved him. But then his chest fell and didn't rise again. The wind picked up, scattering ash from a nearby crater. I laid him down gently, closed his eyes, and took his dog tags. My hands were sticky with his warmth. I wanted to scream, to beat the ground, to ask what the hell any of this was for. But instead, I took the pouch of morphine from my vest, snapped the cap with my teeth, and pushed it into my own thigh. My ribs were on fire again, and the ringing in my ears had returned like a punishment. That's when I saw the glint far off, in the tree line. A scope, a face. I don't know what came over me. Rage, maybe, or some kind of divine madness. I raised my rifle and fired not to kill, not right away. My first shot went wide on purpose, enough to make him flinch. The second one dropped the bastard. When I reached him, he was still alive, gasping. A Russian sniper, maybe 25. Eyes the same color as the boy I'd just lost. He looked at me with something like understanding, or maybe just recognition, like we were both already ghosts. I could have let him bleed out. I should have, but I did what Yura would have done. I pulled out my med kit and wrapped his leg with shaking hands. "Don't thank me," I muttered. "This isn't mercy, it's memory." I radioed for extraction. When the dust-off bird came, I carried Dima's body and the sniper's wounded frame side by side. Back at the field hospital, I sat in silence, staring at the blood crusted under my fingernails. A nurse offered me water. I shook my head. Later that night, I found the sniper again. He was under guard, sedated. I slipped into the med bay, stared at his face for a long time. "You're still breathing because of him," I whispered, "because someone taught me not to become the thing I hate." I dropped Dima's tags into my chest pocket and walked out into the cold. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I wrote a letter to Valentina. I told her Dima died with courage in his eyes and a lullaby in his ears. I told her that he mattered, that he changed me. And it was true. Because in this place where death lives in the soil, I have learned that remembrance is the only thing stronger than fear. I lied to Yura. We didn't both make it. But I'm still here. And I'm not done carrying him.